Hey, everybody. Thank you for coming on to this webinar for the third installment of investment support webinar series. That's one heck of a mouthful. Today, we've got Zakia Moulaoui with us from Invisible Cities, and she's here just to talk about how she's managing through this time with herself, with her team, and with the community around her. So why don't I hand over to you, Zakia? I'll ask a few questions. But really, why don't you just give an introduction to who you are, where you come from, and a little bit about Invisible Cities, and then we can just start our chat, really.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me as well.
No problem.
So my name is Zakia, and I am the founder of Invisible Cities. I'm usually based in Edinburgh, Scotland, but I'm one of these bad people. I traveled through lockdown, so I'm in France just now, where I'm originally from.
Yeah.
So Invisible Cities was created in 2016, and what we do is we train people who have experienced homelessness to become walking tour guides of their own city. So we offer alternative walking tours off the beaten track to tourists and locals alike in 5 different locations in the UK. So that's Edinburgh, where we started, Glasgow, but also Manchester and York. And we were on track before the pandemic to launch in Cardiff, Wales.
Yeah.
And obviously none of that can happen nowadays because of the lockdown. But yeah, we keep on working.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's probably pertinent for everybody to hear is how are you looking after yourself now? And how does that extend to the support that you give all of your employees and volunteers that work with you?
So personally, I tend to be one of these people who work.
You work all the time.
All the time.
And you're traveling all the time.
That's it. So, at the end of last year, in December time, I was physically tired and emotionally drained completely. And I surprised myself to be like, why am I so tired? And I think that's what I go through phases like that, where I will travel a lot. And it obviously disrupts everything for you because you're not at home, you're not eating at home, and you always...
And you have to be out and entertain people and all this kind of thing.
And when you travel for work, you're always working. It's a myth to believe that you have time to do and visit or do other things. So I was already thinking about that, I need to take more time for myself, and I need to kind of not go through these phases of either so much
like up and down all the time.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess the good thing with the current situation is it made you stop whether you wanted it or not.
Yeah.
So but and I've always been really conscious of the mental charge that you can experience and the different pressures that you may also feel. So as a female founder, sometimes I have to prove, I don't know, harder than
feel like you're proving yourself all the time and
So I think that I was always aware, and one thing that we tried to do very early on is to be aware of what others, so guides, trainees, volunteers, were feeling as well, for them to be self-aware, but for also them to tell us.
And what were they saying? What was kind of their concerns and how they were communicating back to you?
Well, I've always found that the people we work with, so people who experience homelessness or trauma or, mental health difficulties, are really self-aware, and there's a lot of knowledge there, and they can spot things, and they can tell you, I feel like that because, so that I definitely noticed that, but I think that the biggest concern was that, because you have people who suffered from anxiety, and all of a sudden they were staying in at home all the time with themselves, and saying, this is going to get triggered again. I don't know, I'm scared that I won't cope. So they were anxious about that. That was the feedback we got a lot, and that maybe prior issues that were managed or under control were going to kind of resurface again. And we also work with people who suffered from addiction. And when you have all the time in the world, then you have the time.
What do you do? Yeah, of course. And like, there's so much time. If you think of these days that we've had, it's felt like almost a year of time.
I know
it's passed quickly, but it feels like you have so much more time just because you're with yourself and you're not engaging with people like we were.
And you don't have that routine anymore. Yeah. So a lot of the things that we do during the year is to have these appointments or these things that people do because it gives them something to do. Yeah. And so on a Saturday morning at 11, you have your tour, even if it's only with 2 guests, but at least it gives you something worth, looking forward to.
You have to show up for it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And all of a sudden you don't have any of that anymore.
Yeah.
So, when we first started organizing deliveries for guides, one of them would not even wake up in the morning to receive the delivery because there was nothing to wake up for in the day.
Yeah.
So I think it's staying on top of people to make sure that, we schedule calls, or in Manchester, for instance, every Friday afternoon, they do a virtual session all together so that those happen and they can look forward to that and to them and to connecting with one another. We did a virtual cup of tea, for instance.
Oh, that's great.
Which was hilarious. So they all had tea or coffee or and cake. And we all spoke sometimes on video, sometimes via photos, sending photos of each other. And I think it's those little moments to have and look forward to.
Yeah, it's still finding a way to socialize when we can't all be together, I think really helps. You talked a little bit about deliveries, and that kind of makes me think, how did you foresee pivoting your business? Because when we talked initially, kind of before lockdown happened, maybe it was, if I can remember the timeline correctly, you were super proactive. You could foresee that everything was going to shut down, and you were like just kind of on it really quickly. How did you come up with this idea, and how did it come about really?
So we were lucky to be a bit proactive and to be seeing what would happen because we work with a lot of international companies, organizations, and in tourism, you are connected with the rest of the world. So you could see lockdown happening in other countries and it affecting us already. So that was a good thing somehow. One of the biggest concern, our priority is always the guides, their health, their mental health, and their progression. But with no tours, then they're losing income and they're losing sometimes quite a lot because of, tips or things that they could make. So that's the more practical side of it, was how do we support people without being able to employ them, without being able to pay them through this time? And then also, how do we protect them? Because a lot of them are in at-risk groups because of their age or prior health issues. So how do we make sure they don't leave, the place they're staying in?
How do they stay home?
How do they stay home? And how do they access healthy food and so that's why we thought of doing deliveries to them on a weekly basis. Of fruit and veg, bread, cake. Of course, some junk food and some comfort food.
Got to keep them alive with a little bit.
I know, and happy, not eating kind of,
they all
all the time.
Faces after quarantine.
I know. What do you put in? But, and I think there's a real thing around dignity for that. And I see, it's an issue for, I think, the homelessness sector. A lot of the stigma around it. There's also a lot of, sometimes, when I do talks in schools or unis or whatever, people say, oh, well, people shouldn't be choosers. You can't say you're giving me a free meal, but I'm vegetarian, so I'm not eating it because it's given to you. You should just accept it and eat it. And I don't believe that at all. I think,
100%.
Have the right to eat and also access to healthy options. So that's what we wanted to do then. So we had a crowdfunder starting very, very early on. So we raised £2,500 on that, which is good. And then Crisis, the homelessness charity.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They also gave us a top up for that. So that's meant that every week we can deliver food to 25 people. And that's, like I said, bread, fruit, veg, meat, that type of
just
thing.
like the essentials that you need.
The essential milk,
diet, right?
eggs, toilet paper. At one point, that was a big issue.
Toilet paper too. Wow.
Toilet paper, masks.
Yeah. I remember you said flowers. How long did the flowers last?
Flowers, yes, a long time. So they were brilliant. They came from this little flower shop who was shutting down because of lockdown. So they donated all these flowers. And I think, again, you're inside all the time.
Yeah.
If you can brighten up your room or your day with a lovely bunch of flowers, then that's good. So, and they looked after them, and also it makes you feel like you belong, like people care about you.
Yeah, of course.
So they were loving it. Yeah.
Just absolutely. Nice touches, I guess. And how did you find yourself communicating with, I guess, your customers? Because obviously you take care of the internal quite well through all of your different locations. But what were customers saying, and how are you communicating things to them as well?
So we were really lucky to have customers reach out to us directly and say, how's it going? What do you need? What can I do to help?
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. One woman she did a tour, and then she had to look at our merchandise stock. Then she phoned me and she said, when I went to New York, I saw this amazing bag by this company. Have you thought of doing it? And, and so now we're going to stock this bag, you know, and I think it's from this really wish of, I want to help. I don't know what I can do, but I've had this idea. So why don't they implement it? With the tours completely cancelled, we've had to communicate with everyone and say, please postpone, please get a credit note and don't get a refund. And because of the nature of what we do, a lot of people were asking us, how are you doing? How are you coping? How are the guides? And that was lovely. But we also sell through a lot of partners. So we were able to speak to Airbnb, and Airbnb communicates with the customers directly, or Etizon in Scotland, that type of thing. But in normal circumstances, again, we say that we're all about the personal connection. So we tried to have this personal approach of, I will write to every single customer and say, wow, this is what's happening. So sometimes
sorry, go ahead.
But sometimes it's you're shooting yourself in the foot because everybody's getting back to you. Everybody's answering, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, But I think it's also who we are. People make a connection with a guide, with Paul in Edinburgh, so they want to know, and that's nice.
And it's nice to have those people-to-people businesses. I mean, because we do everything online today, there's so much of a disconnect. And then if you could have something, especially now where people don't have that physical contact, where you can have something handwritten, that must be such a nice personal touch. And you said it's so nice to have people reaching out to you and saying, how can I help? How can I be of assistance? Continue to support you guys. So it's really nice that you're finding customers that have like good hearts and aren't just coming in and leaving, paying their fee and due.
Or saying, we'll come back in 2021, so we'll definitely use that money for then. Don't worry. So, and in terms of the business, it means you don't have to pay back large amounts of money, because not only are you, losing the money for tours that were scheduled and that were going to happen, but also you're not selling when you should be selling, because people are not wanting to commit. So, if on top of that you have to pay back that money that's already in your account, then that's a massive issue. So, and people totally understood that, and you see it with this surge for like support local businesses, support your local butcher or your local whatever. So I think we definitely part of that.
And if anything, I think that probably just creates an awareness. Oh, there's these guys that are on the corner that rely on our custom all the time, and so hopefully after this, people are still searching those independent businesses out and continuing to support them. That leads me into my next question is, what type of funding were you going after to kind of plug in these shortfalls of cash during this time?
The first So we approached you. But I think it was part of that communicating with your partner.
Oh my gosh, I tried so hard to get you that money as well. And then
I know, and in the end I was like, I don't want it. Which is lovely. But and I think it's, I believe the best piece of advice I got was people do business with other people.
That's so true.
We work with other folk, and you like me and I like you, or you don't like someone, and as a result you tend not to go there, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
So I would say, the choice that I made was to go to people that I knew, and you kind of think about that and say, oh, who can I approach and talk to? But we got some funding from the Resilience Fund, the Social Enterprise Fund, really early on, hence why we didn't need that all came at the same time, either everything does or nothing comes through.
Yeah, it's so weird how everything's so quiet and then everybody wants to give you money.
Absolutely. But then I think that was the only part of money that we went for, because then my approach was to go for small things,
right?
The crisis, homelessness, charity crisis fund, because I think sometimes I found it really overwhelming, the news and the amount of information on this fund is open and this fund is now open and this is going to happen and the government is doing this, and then you don't know what to do. You don't know what to approach, or you don't even know how to apply to things.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Or they would release it and then it was like, oh, there's no way to apply yet. So you're constantly getting updates 24/7 and stressed out of your mind.
And I found it really frustrating, this bit, because it was quite sensational. We are releasing this fund at £6 million, which is obviously amazing, but it's not open for application yet. So maybe tell me when it's opened and I can do something about it. Yeah. So that was quite frustrating. And so I completely stopped looking at that after a while and decided to go for things that were more relevant to us. So whether it was access to food, hence the crisis grant, or little things like now, mental health, well-being, and sending out maybe devices as opposed to to bigger, or maybe very localized funding. So Leith had a few options available, and we do a lot of things in Leith. But it's quite not a frustrating world, but it's really busy and there's loads of information, and it can be quite hard when you're dealing with a million of other things to apply.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine, like, running a business, trying to make sure that all of your tour guides are supported, also your team, also all of your customers, and then on top of that, going for grants. And like a lot of times grants, they want you to pursue a project. And all of this funding for coronavirus was like, we don't want any projects. We don't want any new things. We just want to cover your shortfalls of cash based on this really small category. So you found yourself like nickel and diming all of these different funds.
And also the funds themselves, like I think everybody is figuring it out as we go along, or at least was. So guidelines were completely different from one day to the next. I think if I had applied at a different time, then it would have been different things to prove or things to say. So that's frustrating as well. But that's why it's a job, it's people's full-time jobs to access grants. And I totally understand.
Telling people is like, don't be discouraged if you get rejected over and over. Like, this is actually a really hard thing. One of our investees who was rejected by like 29 applications. So I connected him with a bid writer, somebody who actually writes bids. But it's just, it's insane. And it's not their fault. They're trying to do the right thing. And there's probably loads of people scrambling behind those, application forms and stuff. And it's just,
and then when you get the feedback and you see 4,000 people applied for a pot that can be divided between 20, realistically,
it's crazy.
You can be amazing and your stuff is amazing and your bid was great, but that's just the luck. And, what do you want to do against that? I don't know.
Yeah. No clue. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're headed next? What your marketing and comms has been. Actually, let's talk about marketing and comms first. So like, how have you broadcasted how everything is going and what you're also delivering now?
So we pivoted quite well, and that's credit to the team.
Yeah.
They did really, really well at coming up with ideas for things that we could do. And again, I think it also comes back to looking after our guides, because we want them to stay engaged and kind of intellectually there, and and feeling that they're part of it. So we had to come up with products that we could sell during this time. So we started doing virtual tours, of course pushing our gift cards, but our gift cards are not really involving our guides, so it's more delaying what's happening. But online quizzes, so we did an online quiz,
like a pub quiz, or like a
pub quiz.
Oh, amazing.
So instead of scheduling them in, we have a kit that you can have, and you organize it with your friends, family.
Oh, right, you do it yourself.
Yeah, and then you can get a quiz master from us. You can get questions from us, so you can get as little as you want or as much as you want from us.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so that went really well. And of course, Paul, our guide, he loved being the quiz master. So that's great.
Did Sunny write a quiz?
No.
Oh, man.
Paul did in Edinburgh. Okay. Angus as well.
Angus,
Angus is a big issue, or used to be a big issue vendor. Yeah. Probably the most intelligent man I've ever met. He came up with really clever questions, sometimes really stupid, but really fun and really. So we used a lot of his questions for the kids' content that we've developed. So he's happy to see that being used. And the kids' stuff was something that we always wanted to do. We always wanted to have on our site, and as part of what we do, something for children in schools. In particular, but again, never really had the time to develop that or whatever. So with the lockdown, we developed packs that people can download and print at home, and they're like games, mazes, word searches, quizzes on each of the city that we're in. So we have now this range of products that we'd never had before, and
they'll continue to grow, hopefully, even after that.
Wow. And so the kids stuff, for instance, is a brilliant example, because we can develop that into our whole school and family section of the tours, of the activities. But, we can go into the classroom when classrooms are opened again, do some activities together, do a tour together. So it fits really well with what we wanted to do.
With your current narrative. And it's also like breaking down barriers between people thinking that homelessness only happens to a particular type of person. Just creating some understanding, I guess, and bringing it to the kids who are going to shape tomorrow.
And that's we already started doing things like that, going into the classroom and doing Mythbusters of, breaking down a myth, for instance, that homeless people are uneducated. Yeah. And so if I go into Angus, that I just mentioned, has more university degrees than I do. So, and we talk about that. What does that look like, and why is it? And so it fits really well with the work that we do, and it will fit well with what we continue doing.
And what collaborations have kind of come out of this time? Is there anything that you're kind of looking forward to after all this lockdown is over?
There's a lot of really exciting things that have come up at every level. That's what I really like, partnering up with a local business that you never knew how you could work with before, and all of a sudden, here we go.
Now all of a sudden you'll be managing a new team to do deliveries after this.
I know. Or like people, or equipment organizing or whatever it is. But so at a very local level, but so we partner up as well with Keep Edinburgh Thriving, which is, a box that you can get that has loads of goodies from local businesses.
Great.
So, and they're developing in loads of different cities in the UK. So that's quite nice, because it follows us quite nicely. But we always wanted to work with a tourism marketing agency and never really formalized that.
Right.
So the lockdown was the moment when I was like, okay, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And let's work together finally on something. So
there's nothing like holding you back anymore, right?
I know, let's do it. So launching campaigns together, which is quite nice. And again, through our partners, there's some pretty exciting things we can't really say yet.
Oh, come on.
No, but I think the whole world is thinking about virtual activities right now.
Oh yeah, VR world. I mean, you should talk to Viorama.
Yeah, no, and I've been meaning to, so that's going to happen. But even the big companies are thinking or were thinking of doing things. So there's loads of potential there. Online courses, for instance, is a thing. So last year I did a big conference in America, and what came out of that was a lot of people have said, oh, you should do a course, you should do like 4-hour webinar, that people can buy online and around sustainable tourism or some of the solutions that you bring in. And so this time has meant that I have a lot more time on my hands to actually develop the course,
Right. Okay. Is that one of the things that you're developing, or is that one of the
Yeah, no, and it probably will be, but it's quite. I think the difficulty is the same that it is in the normal world. Is that you have to follow it up. You have to be
about action rather than ideas, right?
Yeah, and you can have a million of ideas, but if you never do anything about it, then actually a really good project. So before the lockdown, we applied for funding with the National Lottery.
Right, okay.
And we were successful in securing the funding for a project called Invisible Women of Scotland.
Oh, right, okay.
And so what it is women only around women history and women issues between Edinburgh and Glasgow. So we will train people, women, but we will also work with women organizations to bring some light onto women issues. So in Edinburgh, we always talk about the fact that there's no statues of women. There are more statues of animals than of women in Edinburgh.
Oh, that's horrible.
So there were campaigns and there is intention to kind of change that, but it's never really changed. So we want to talk about this, and we want to talk about, period poverty with our friends from Hey Girls, maybe. I don't know. So there's loads of things like that.
We've got a new investee called Frill Factory, and they're basically trying to teach girls how to create prop design and with like Singer, what do you call those? The things that sew things? Sewing machines. Things that sew things. But yeah, do loads of education with young girls, so I'll connect you with her.
Oh, so that'd be good. So it was an amazingly positive news to receive during this time.
Yeah.
That's something to plan for, because that's time for a staff member. That's also like a series of events. Part of that, we want to do events on women in tourism, right? And how. So there's loads of research done about this, that in certain countries you don't have women guides because it's not safe, right?
Oh, wow, yeah.
But in a lot of countries you have women involved in tourism, but not at senior level. So in the big companies, like in a lot of other industries, at senior level, you only have men. So we want to talk about that. So events for the industry, events for the public, events for the beneficiaries, and that's super exciting to plan during the lockdown.
Yeah. Well, because you have all the time in the world. Like usually planning events is super stressful because you have no time to plan the event.
Absolutely. So so we're going to recruit someone.
Oh, awesome.
To work on that as well. So it's a bit weird to say we're actually expanding the team during a pandemic, but here we go. So there's loads of really positive things that are coming up.
Right, that's awesome. And also, what are some positive things? I guess this will be like the last question. What are some positive things that have come out of lockdown for you, either personally or with your?
The best thing, I think, which I knew anyway, was how amazing the team is. My team.
Yeah.
And they've been absolutely kind of brilliant at keeping it all together. making it happen. And I think we sometimes when you run a social enterprise, you end up at the forefront of a lot of things. So I speak at events, and I'm the one who travels, and I do the interviews and all of that. And I'm super conscious of that because I understand that you need a face and you need a person, but ultimately the work isn't done by me only, you know?
Yeah.
So this time has really brought us together. It's really meant that, you know, everybody's sticking in and making the decisions together and doing everything. Awesome. And they've been super supportive of me. You know, I've had to take time off during the lockdown and not had to worry about anything because I know that everything is, and even, you know, so I'm on time off for personal reasons, and every guide is sending me loads of lovely messages to say, you know, I'm thinking about you, be strong. Yeah. So sometimes
it's nice to see that you kind of have like this extension of people that actually really care about you, and you never get to see on a day-to-day basis. So it's
and you care about them, you know. And I think my priority is always to say, is everybody okay? Is everybody, you know, safe? And you know that it works both ways. But when something like that happens, then, you know, and they look after you and they say, what can I do to help you? You know, I've had to quit to leave my flat, and people have said, do you want me to water your plants? What do you want me? And you're like, this is really sweet, but no, thank you, you know. But so it's love. And
I know I don't care about my plants.
Let them be. But and the creativity and, you know, innovation, it just shows how passionate people are about it. And I think, you know, that's really helped me kind of continue through, because especially when you start something, sometimes, you know, all the passion and all the love that you have for it, you have it, but it's a blessing to know that others have it too.
They've acquired it as well.
Yeah, I know, as passionate about it as you are, and they'll completely, you know, champion it. And so for me, that's the best thing. I knew that they were all amazing and everything, but now it's been confirmed. So that's been quite nice. And maybe possibilities that we never knew we could have, you know, new conversations, new chats, new relationships as well. There's something quite exciting about not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, like the wait before the next.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, what about like one last tidbit for everybody that will listen onto this going forward? What would you say to all of those new or early stage social enterprise founders?
I think the power, you should never underestimate the power of collaboration and you know, working with others. I think to me that's the saving, you know, just even if it's to have a chat with someone else. So Gerard from the Blank Faces and I are often on the phone to just chat about the world and complain, you know, and I think I need it. You know, I need to be able to rant with someone.
You have to filter all of this stuff out somehow.
I know. And that's really important. So find others that you can speak to and get ideas from and support from, you know, because when things like a pandemic happen or personal stuff happen, then that's when you need it the most. And it will come through, you know, people will say, well, you know, people will look after you and people will help you through. And I'm really glad to know how we are coming out of this. And I think one thing I've learned is that people remember the past and they remember you and they remember what you've done. So, you know, if you have not a bad reputation, but, you know, take that example of Weatherspoon. They've been really, really bad around how they're treating suppliers and staff, and they'll come out, you know, at some point people I hope will stop using them or will boycott them or whatever. But I think it's the same, you know, you're coming out in a way, be conscious of what you're putting out, be conscious of what you're saying about others and how, because you never know who you're going to work with in the future.
That is so true.
And I think that Scotland in particular is a very small place. And so you need one another and you need each other. And personally, I found it a strength to know that I have others that I can go to. And hopefully that can come to me, And that's why if somebody says, can I have a chat about this or about that? I always try to say yes. Yeah. Because I think it's so important. When I started, all I did was chat to others all the time. So, I think it's the least I can do to do the same.
Of course. And you remember, likewise, when you were starting your business, hopefully there were other people that were willing to have a chat with you or point you in the right direction or connect you with somebody. And you never know when that comes back.
I'll tell you another example. When I started, I was part of the incubator with the Melting Pot, the Good Ideas Academy.
Yeah.
And one of the new attendees of that incubator, she does Pilates, and she's called Julie. So she runs Pilates classes. And we had a chat. We met for coffee. She was asking me loads of questions, probably last year. And when the lockdown started, she ran classes and promoted our kids' stuff, and she donated money from the classes to us.
Oh, wow.
And she said, because I remember you helped me, it was that personal connection of you took the time and we spoke and it was really helpful, and I want to help you now. And she's running her online classes,
That's
I was
so
like,
cool.
oh my God. And it had she says it had a big impact on her, and I'm super glad because now she says, I love it when especially women entrepreneurs supports another women entrepreneur. And I was like, that's the least I could have done. You paid for my coffee. I had coffee and,
And for you, it was probably like nothing because, you're super easygoing, easy to chat to. And you're just like, here, know this.
Yeah. And I was like, if I can help with anything, then of course I will. And it was important because I know it is important at the start. And so she thought it was a small thing, but it was really important to us to have this support. And it meant, 15 families had access to our content, and then a bit of cash and, some promotion. So
that's awesome.
It was all really, really good. In the end, really good stuff come out of this.
Yeah. So I'm just going to do a plug real quick, and then I'll end the recording. And then if you want to chat, we can continue to chat. But thank you so much for coming on here, and all of your advice and all of the little tidbits that you've shared have been super, super helpful. And I'm sure they will continue to be for all of the social enterprise founders that we've got coming on. Just want to remind everybody that we have a social impact workshop next week on Tuesday at 2 p.m. To conclude the Impact Support webinar series. So thanks so much, Zakia, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.